Hi, this is Michael Azarad, Editor-in-Chief of The Talkhouse, and welcome to the newest episode of the Talkhouse Music Podcast. Today's Talkhouse Music Podcast has a story behind it. Liam Wilson of the absolutely intense hardcore metal math rock band The Dillinger Escape Plan wrote a kind of ambivalent Talkhouse piece about the new album by Winger, the huge 80s pop metal band. The funny thing is, after that, Wilson and the band's leader, Kip Winger, struck up an email correspondence and got to be pretty friendly. So we figured we'd put them together for a podcast, and it was a really interesting conversation. Here's what happened.
Testing 1, 2. Liam, what's up, man?
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. So I guess touching back on one of the first things we were discussing, or I thought was interesting, was the idea of making old new music.
Yeah.
You were saying, something about how, sort of, I guess I couldn't tell if it was a perceived reaction from fans or what you felt like fans, truly wanted, or whether it was something in yourselves that kind of said, okay, when we did the Karma record, we're going to do it this way. And then with this one, we're going to sort of do it slightly different, with Better Days Coming.
You said it best in the email that you sent me, where you're just trying to write music you haven't heard, So with
right, yeah,
and that's a great way to put, when you're a writer of any kind or an artist of any kind, that's what you're really seeking to do, I think. But
yeah, of course.
But with my band, having come with this brand that was, really successful back in the day, and being a part of a cultural movement with the 80s rock thing,
right?
And then, but being in the headspace that I'm actually in, with all the other music that I write, coming back to it, we try not to second guess too much. But I mean, man, there's fans that are just staunch 80s fans. They don't want you to, they don't want you to change. I mean, Dave Ling gave us a really bad review on this record because he was like, the first 3 songs are worthy of the first record, and then they try to do the Doobie Brothers on Better Days Coming. But I was, we did Better Days Coming, and it was kind of like, it was our answer to Down Incognito. We were just taking the piss out of ourselves because we don't care. Because we don't care anymore, man.
Yeah.
And so.
I guess that's kind of the the next question is like, what is motivating you, and because the way that I listened to that first record, the self-titles it's very much like there's something to prove, and I feel like me, I'm 35, and I kind of feel like that kind of puts me in the middle, where I can look down on younger bands and see like them coming out of the gates hot, and swinging for the fences. And then I feel like there's this other, section of older bands that I feel like just kind of have fallen off like an old athlete, and they just can't get it back. And, and what I liked about your record is I felt like it was right down the middle, but without naming names of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Like a Chubby?
No. I mean, I felt like it was respectable. It wasn't trying to be anything it wasn't.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And there's a lot of things that I hear where it's like, without naming names, there's bigger acts who just kind of keep, it's almost like the next record is worse than the one before it.
Well, it's one of my pet peeves. A lot of guys are completely replete for ideas, and they keep writing the same song over and over and over and over and over again. And I'm like,
right.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, like, do you feel like that's because they're tapped, because they just don't care? Do you think that they legitimately think they're writing groundbreaking music and they're just not? And I ask this almost like I need to mentally prepare myself for, some kind of fall off, because I feel like it's across the board, and it doesn't necessarily happen. It happens in sports, but it doesn't seem to happen in, like, say, writing.
Yeah. I think it's all of the above, what you're saying, and not to mention the one part, the part that you didn't mention is if you're a massive band, when we know that there's a few of these guys like this that are still putting out records, they're still thinking, I mean, it sounds to me with the ones that keep rehashing the same music that they're afraid
Right.
To move to the left or the right because they're really, they want to appease their fans and they think that they can't, make a move either way. For me, man, I mean, I'd slip my wrist if that was me. I couldn't do that. And so I'd rather be broke with no bread and continue to do what I want to do rather than be confined in a ivory castle with the billions and keep singing the same tune. I mean, it's it's artistic death. It's artistic death. So, but as for younger bands, I mean, for older bands that don't sell a lot of records that keep doing the same song, I think those guys are like reaching for a thing that doesn't exist anymore, and they're thinking. Some of them I listen, not to mention any names, but I mean, some of them still think it's the '80s.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And so I just think, I'm guilty of not knowing a lot of the new music around me. You seem to be really, aware of a lot of stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
And that's a plus, man. I mean,
you put me next to somebody who's 15 years younger than me, and we'll see though.
Yeah.
There's still things coming up, and I'm relatively aware of things, but I find myself, again, getting that kind of dad head of, for lack of a better term, where I just can't relate to anything new. And not to say that I don't like it. I don't want to sound like I'm a Luddite and that I don't appreciate certain things. And, but there's just a lot of stuff where I'm just like, my ears just can't handle it. I hear, anything too quantized, anything too much on a click track just kind of irks me. And I know that that's just a nurtured bias.
Right.
So
well, I think the point that you get, for me, what happened was that when I'm 52 now, so I'm looking at this from a whole nother perspective, looking at it going, okay, well, I have this brand. We did pretty good. There's a lot of people that like what we do. Yeah. And honestly, there's a lot of young fans at our shows now. It's really surprised me, 30 and under, that are digging on it.
I mean, I definitely felt like after I wrote that review, I was getting a lot of, responses from people that made me feel like almost like I'm Ellen DeGeneres and I came out of the closet liking Winger, and now I've made it okay for other people to admit that they do too.
Oh, amen, and thank you for doing that.
Hey, man, thanks for giving me something to rock to. So
I appreciate
it. But it's been really kind of interesting to me to watch even just the comments from certain people like, oh man, I've been digging those last 3 records, but I haven't opened my mouth about it. Or,
well, I mean, we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
The thought I was saying just before this was that, I've looked at what I want to accomplish in my own life, and then I also need to respect the fans that have kind of put me in the place that I'm at. So when it comes to Winger, I'm like, hey, I want to give them what they're looking for to an extent, but I also want to make I want them to concede that I need to move forward on something. So that's kind of how those records go. We're like, Tin Soldier's a good example of it.
Yeah.
We're like, this is kind of where our heads are at. Can we spoon feed this to you enough where you'll still hear what you're hoping to hear in our records, but you'll also go into this place. So it's not so confining that we just, people are wanting us to just do the first album over and over again. And I think anybody will get to that point where if you're working, like if you're doing Dillinger's Escape Plan in 15 years, you're going to have a certain percentage hardcore fans are going to want that thing. I mean, when I listen to your music, I don't hear actually like one thing. So, but there is there's a line drawn in there where, you can define what you guys do. And I think it's important to respect the people that put you there that are still buying your records, and give them enough of what they want, but also, define yourself for who you are at that time, because otherwise you're dead. I mean, it just doesn't work,
Yeah, I definitely think that the point you're making about, your fans put you there. You do owe them a certain amount of, comfort, I guess, in, or on non-spontaneity, security in what it is that you deliver and what they enjoy.
As a young artist, I repelled the idea that I was pigeonholed into the 80s. And now I go, okay, I was pigeonholed into the 80s. That's what happened. And I can live with it. It's like, it's one of those things. And and by the way, if you really are a fan, this is the other thing I do. And I've actually turned a lot of people on just to orchestral music who never even knew anything about it. So that's my way to do that. But I'll still give them what they're looking for on the Winger stuff to a point. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know if it's the young attitude with Dillinger, but we've always kind of been, if you see the Buddha in your path, slay the Buddha.
Right.
Kind of, or almost like, we need to educate our audience. Our responsibility is to take them somewhere they're uncomfortable with. And I think to some extent we've always left them wanting a little bit more than, leave them wanting more. Has always kind of been, maybe not our attitude, but a little bit of the bravado. And, but, again, thinking about aging, your fans are aging. We do have a lot of older fans coming back. We do have a lot of younger fans coming in. We have songs that are hitting the radio now. So it's funny just seeing this whole thing transition and thinking about getting older and kind of how to do it all gracefully without shrugging off your base.
Well, if you stand the test of time and you start becoming a blue chip stock and you start thinking, okay, well, we can't, the chances that we used to take, we had nothing to lose. And then you start becoming a blue chip stock and you're going, we have this and this and this to lose. Right. Is it okay to throw it away? I mean, it is okay.
Yeah.
But you just have to make the call if you're going to do that because, you guys have been around a while. And when I listen to, the transition between your first album and your last album, it's a pretty big transition from my perspective.
Sure. No, I agree.
And so and then you become, you start to have this long legacy, and you start to look back at what that takes on its own perspective and meaning.
Yeah, when you were talking about like spoon feeding your audience, I feel like we've definitely. Again, maybe not in a premeditated kind of way, but there's always been this thing, when we put out that Unretrified song on that first record, it was definitely to make sure that we did not paint ourselves into any corners.
Right.
And kind of give ourselves something to live up to for the rest of the career. Like, okay, well, it's okay to throw these curveballs at our fans. And, strangely enough, it seems like those are the songs that we at least get more of a response visually for the songs that I wouldn't consider the most atypical Dillinger song.
Now, did you actually talk amongst yourselves and say, do you guys think this is cool to put this song on here? Or did you kind of just instinctively do it?
I mean, I think there was at least with Unretrified, there was a little bit of, like, can we do this? And then it was like, yeah, okay, the fact that we're even asking means we have to. And I feel like it's our responsibility to work with it to a point where it has to work. It's, kind of, you were saying something about, I forget exactly the point you made, but it was something about just kind of owning owning what it is you are. I think a lot of people pigeonhole us and say that we, are a math metal band or the band that started math metal. And like most artists, you hear somebody pigeonhole you and you don't like it. Instinctively, you're like, no, that's not what we are. Or, okay, you think that's what we are? Then we'll give you the antithesis to what you think we are. And then I think sort of a little bit more recently, we acquiesce a little bit more into, if that's what you say we are, then we're just going to grab it and own it and just be the best at that we can be. And, and keep adding what it is that we do in addition to that, the stuff that's not simply just math metal, but understanding that we have to pay our dues.
I've never even heard that term, math metal. I love that. That's awesome.
It's pretty fun. I mean, there's all kinds of millions of subgenres. And yeah, I mean, when I heard it, it was like, sure, it is mathy, but similar to you, we're probably a lot more uneducated than most people would think. And I think that most of where we're coming from and a lot of what we default to is like a very punk mentality and, very attitude driven. How does this feel?
Right.
Not, is this riff cool to play or even, sometimes it's not even how it sounds so much as just, does it have snarl? Can you imagine playing it live and stomping to it?
Right.
Can you imagine, being able to pull this off? Because if it's too much, then we'll probably dial it back a little bit. Again, we're not trying to be the best at practicing, but there is this kind of idea of having to prove something. And I'm just kind of wondering, if and when that feeling will ever fade off.
Late shifts over in this working town. She starts a motor when the sun goes down. She runs on sex and gasoline. She's a midnight driver of a love machine.
Do you guys still feel like there's something to prove, or is it just kind of getting your rocks off?
I mean, we went into this new record, and Reb and I sat down. We sit down. It's exactly the same on every record since the very beginning. And then, on this album, we actually said, we got nothing to prove. We really actually we said that to amongst ourselves. We just sat there. Yeah, right. We got nothing to prove. Fuck it. Let's just do the best shit we're doing between us, and let's pick the. We don't spend a lot of time on a record. We wrote Karma in 10 days, the tracks.
Wow. Okay.
It was like a song a day, and it was like let's work till we find the coolest riff, and the way and I was going to say earlier how it feels is a big thing. Yeah. Probably the most important thing, and then and on Karma we did okay, so it goes back to Winger 4 when Winger 4 was the first record we'd done in a long time, and my take on it was that the future of the band was to go much more progressive because the players are capable of a lot more than we've been doing. Sure. And so we did this record that it's not like prog rock, but it's a lot more progressive for us. And there's literally, some atonal stuff happening in the solos, like on M16, whatever. Anyway, I could get into the whole rant and rave, but the point was that, I felt like that was the future of the band. Well, it came out. I mean, no one got it. The fans were like, okay, it's kind of cool, but we don't really get it. Yeah. And so when Karma came along, I was like, all right, we're going to give them what they want. I mean, I really did sit there and go, look, Reb, we're gonna go rock our faces off for the first 5 songs, no ballads, up and just fast licks. You're gonna play really fast and all this, and even on Pull Me Under, I was like, what's the fastest lick you got, and how long can you hold it? So it did a little, and that's kind of how that was born. And bang, the crowd goes wild, and they dug it, and it dawned on me. I was like, okay, I get it. We are this band, and this is what they want us to be. So as long as I can fuck around with weird scales like Stone Cold Killers, like it's like a octatonic thing that I'll throw a weird lick, I'll throw a weird scale at Rev and say, write me a riff with these notes or something like that. And as long as I can get my theory yah-yahs off enough, I'm fine. So we do Karma, and people dug it, and it sold way more than the other one, and so on. And then we came into this exactly saying, we got nothing to prove. Let's work on what kind of throw everything we've ever done into the soup and stir it up and see what it is, Right.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think it came out well. I mean, absolutely. And I think that if this time it's a matter of not trying to prove anything, then that almost comes off more sincere.
I think so, and so we're that was 5 years in between a record, because I don't know about you guys, but my band. Did you guys how many shows a year do you guys do?
On a touring cycle, like this past 12 months, probably almost 200.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, and my band, Reb's been in Whitesnake for 11 years. John's in Starship. Rod teaches at Berkeley. So it's kind of like, we can get together every 3 or 4 years to do a record and tour. I mean, I don't know how long it'll be before Whitesnake goes out, but we're touring till the end of the year. But so our records are a little more few and far between, because we've all got so much stuff going on. Yeah. The thing about our band, though, is that we get together because we dig each other so much, and it's such a great hang. And that's really the centerpiece of our thing. We laugh a lot, and it's just it's a blast to hang out with. Reb's one of the funniest motherfuckers on the planet. Yeah. And so we laugh, and it's fun, and when it ain't fun, man, I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, when it's pretty awesome to see a band not really have a lineup change and come back and still do it and be doing the same things, because you know that nobody's forcing you to do it.
Right.
And that's, again, where it comes off way more kind of sincere and earnest. And Dillinger, it's kind of a funny mix where nobody right now lives in the same state. And, none of us went to high school together. None of us knew each other.
We're exactly okay. So we have that in common.
When the band started, it was friends, but over the years, almost everybody has been replaced. So we kind of had to learn how to be friends in a way. We were kind of almost boy banded together, based on who could and would do it, because as you know, it's not necessarily the best guitar player for the job who gets the job. It's got to be the person who's willing to tour. And I don't get paid for the hour I'm on stage. You get paid for the 23 it took you to get there. Yeah. There's got to be, how we play on stage is one thing, but I got to be able to get along with you for the other 23, and know that your girlfriend's not going to get in the way when we got to catch this plane, and, et cetera, et cetera. So
that's very interesting. So how many original guys are there?
At the moment, there's one.
And that would be you, or?
No, that would be Ben, our guitar player. I'm the oldest non-original player.
And how long have you been?
Almost 15 years.
Okay, well that's
so. Yeah, I've been at least rehearsing this stuff for 15 and playing officially for about 14. So, yeah, almost half my life at this point. I don't really know what else to do. I wouldn't really know what to do.
And does everybody contribute to the writing? How does that go down?
Writing is typically Ben is the main fountainhead. Comes up with the lion's share of riffs and rhythms. Billy, our drummer, will contribute rhythms as well, and ideas. But the main constant has been Ben. So every drummer has come in and kind of dropped their little piece of the puzzle on everything. And I kind of like to say that Greg and I, Ben and Billy build the walls, kind of stud everything out. Mm-hmm. And Greg and I kind of go in and maybe, hang the drywall or, paint.
Right.
We're more interior decorators, so to speak. A lot of the stuff, similar to what you're saying, I think I've done more rearranging and suggesting, hey, let's do this twice, or,
right.
That kind of stuff, contributing a riff here and there. But for the most part, my focus is just on bass.
And so when you guys do a record, I mean, this sounds a lot like my band. I mean, we don't. Yeah. None of us have ever lived in the same state, really. I mean, from the second we got on tour on the first record, I mean, that was it. Reb lives in Pittsburgh, and I was in various places. Rod's in New York, and John's in Memphis, and we're just so it's always a pain in the balls to get together to rehearse for a tour and all this kind of stuff. And anything is a pain in the balls, So
totally.
I totally envy bands that all live in the same place, and it would make it so much easier, man.
Absolutely. I mean, at this point, our pre-production is like, or rehearsing is basically the first show. In a lot of cases, sometimes we get to jam certain things a little bit, but it's kind of a matter of all of us showing up and just knowing what needs to be done. And even this last record, the One of Us is the Killer record, I didn't play any of that stuff live as a band with anybody until well after it was recorded. Once we had to start touring it, it was like, okay, I guess we got to learn how to play it together.
That's what we do, man. I mean, dude, we when we did our first, we put our record out, and we were lucky enough to get the Scorpions tour, and we'd never done a gig, So because I came out of Alice Cooper, and I knew Reb from before. Rod was in the Drag, so and Paul was the original member on keyboards and guitar, and he came with me and Alice. We rehearsed for a week in a rehearsal studio and walked up on stage. Chord 1, Reb's amp goes down. And Scorpions are like, "Who are these guys? They're terrible. Yeah. Get them off the tour now. Get out." And so and I wasn't a front man, dude. I was like, I was kind of standing up there going, "Oh, thank you very much. How's it going?" 2 weeks.
Any jokes?
2 weeks later, after watching Klaus, I'm like, "Listen, motherfucker, let me see your hands." I just learned it all on the spot, man. I came out of a band with my brothers where each guy took a lead song, and I was never a front man.
Right.
I kind of developed it as I went, so it's always been that way. So
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much to the artistic or the creative process that just has to do with showing up almost every day, and just getting that 10,000 hours in there. I mean, there's so many, I do a decent amount of teaching these days, and so much of what I end up telling kids is just like, okay, just keep doing whatever you're doing. You're doing really great. Now just do it for 10 more years, and
Right.
and it'll all make sense. Just commit to that.
It's hard to pass that on to people that are so eager.
Yeah.
When did you start playing bass?
I got the bug at around 11. I went on like an outward bound backpacking trip. And one of the guys that we were, that was kind of mentoring the trip, we started talking about music. I was saying that, I was into, everything from Chili Pepper and Faith No More and Primus and all this stuff, and how I wanted to be a drummer. And he was a bass player, and he had said like, oh yeah, all those bands have great drummers, but they also have great bass players. So I kind of went home half idolizing him and, just kind of listening a little closer to the music I was into and realized, yeah, I kind of want to play bass. So around 12, I got a rental instrument and just kind of attacked it since then.
And you grew up in Philly?
Yeah, I grew up in Philly, non-musical parents, no real external musical influence at all. Just, a lot of MTV. And as cheesy as that sounds, there was definitely a moment where it was like, oh, wow, I can just get really good at that, and that's what happens? Where do I sign?
Well, you're doing it.
I mean, to some degree, there's no, I think about like the Paradise City video or something, and it's not like we're playing to those crowds, but it's still been, nothing short of an amazing, blessed experience.
Absolutely, man. Did you go to university, or what's your?
I went to school for woodworking, so I was studying furniture and sculpture with wood as my focus. And then it was a University of the Arts, so it had like a music program, a theater program, dance program, all that stuff in the same campus. So I was able.
Where was this?
In Philadelphia. Again, I don't get very, I have aside from touring, I don't go very far.
Well, you're a very well spoken dude, so I was just kind of curious.
I went to I'll rewind a little bit. I went to an all-boys prep high school, and did 3 years of Latin. So there's a little bit of I don't know, a little bit of indoctrination in there, I guess. And then I went to like I said, a arts college. Took woodworking and was taking one credit in the music department every semester. So I would go and take bass lessons in like a jazz department. And then 3 years into that, after my junior year, I signed the papers to leave, and then that's when I joined Dillinger.
Oh, cool.
So there was definitely a lot of personal turmoil with family and certain friends about leaving school and kind of following, some really, at the time, very primitive dream with some underground metal band.
Oh, hey, man, I dropped out of high school, and my dad was very cool about it. And on his side of the family, everybody's got 1 or 2 doctorates in something.
Okay, amazing.
And they were all freaking out, man. They were all freaking out. And so, I've always been very sensitive to it. I went back for a GED, and I went back to University of Denver for a few things, but it was never my thing. But I can relate to the family up in arms. They were freaking out on it, and I sent them all a platinum record. The first time.
Yeah.
To vindicate my dad more than anything, because he was the one that had the balls to let me follow my thing, even though my parents were musicians, so I was encouraged to do music. But it was, back then, that was 1975 or 76, and they were freaking out.
Yeah, I think for me it was, with my mom, my dad was a little bit more laid back, kind of follow your dreams about it. My mom, I think, had a little bit more invested in it, and just kind of wanted to see me get the degree and then make the decision. But it was hard because I knew the opportunity wouldn't wait.
Absolutely.
And I knew that school would always be there. And now I've kind of, I don't poo-poo higher education, but I'm really, really glad that I did it the way I did it. And, it makes me way more confident with every other decision I have to make in my life.
And then you don't live with regret.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. There's or debt.
Yeah, exactly.
There's not too much of that.
So how did you get the call to do Dillinger?
So the original bass player in the band, Adam, was paralyzed in a car accident. So from the armpits down, he became immobile. They had a fill-in playing with him for a little while who just kind of, I guess, didn't completely fit. He was getting the job done, but he wasn't the dude. Right. So they called a friend of mine, this guy Jim, who'd played in this band Believer. They were like a kind of underground proggy tech metal band. He'd played guitar and bass on the studio recording. Dillinger were fans of the record. They asked him to play bass. He couldn't do it, so he gave them my number and kind of gave me their number. But Jim had never seen me play. I just worked at a record store. He would come in. We would talk about music, and I guess he just put
instinct.
Yeah, he was just like, this guy's not a chump. But I had never played with a pick. I'd never, really played at that level. But was a fan of the band. Long story short, I went and listened to a mixed copy of Calculating Infinity, which was the band's first full length, in their car the next time they played Philly, and was like, okay, I have to do this. Jim introduced me, like I said, in person, and it took about 6 months for me to get used to the pick and kind of the vocabulary that Dillinger was speaking with.
Right.
And, in a physical way. Like, I was familiar with it viscerally. I could listen to it and understand it, but to play it was a different animal. And then it took about 6 or 7 months of me playing, and then rehearsing on my own. Then Jeff, the guy filling in, had to go to a funeral for 2 days. So they played CB's in New York and a kind of punk space in West Philly.
What year was that?
That was in 2000.
Wow.
So, exactly. CB's 2000.
I'm thinking, that's exactly my thought. Okay.
So, I played that show and played 5 of the 7 songs that they played, and kind of stood on the side of the stage for the songs I didn't know and turned my volume up for the 1 or 2 parts of those songs that I knew. And just kind of, I guess that was sort of my interview. And then they toured with Jeff for another 6 months. I dropped out of school and kind of bit my fingernails into oblivion waiting for the official call. And then sometime around August, September, I got the official call up, and by November I was in Europe.
Awesome. That's an awesome story. I love that.
pretty funny trajectory. And I've just kind of been holding on to the reins ever since.
Look up and there you are, dancing alone in the stars, getting too close but so far away now. Look what you've almost missed, a transcendental kiss, universal bliss inside you.
And you're going to tour through the end of the year? What's your thing now?
We tour through the end of July. I'm sorry, we tour in July 7th. We'll end that European tour, and then we really don't have anything else for the rest of the year, as far as I know. I'm actually taking the plunge. I'm the first one in the band expecting a kid.
Uh-huh.
So that's coming November.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I asked politely for some, space around that time. And I mean, we actually did have to turn down one show in Mexico, which, to anybody in Mexico listening, I'm terribly sorry, but
you'll be back.
I'll be back. And then, so hopefully we'll take that time to write I've got some other local music stuff brewing that I'm trying to, get out in that time.
Now, will you teach? You said you teach like do you teach on Skype or do you teach?
Yeah, I teach on Skype and in person, preferably in person. But the Skype thing is actually it's pretty functional.
It is. I've done quite a bit of that myself.
Yeah, and it's great too when I'm about to meet somebody in person. Or I had one student in Ireland who I would, we'd had Skype lessons for 6 months, and then I got to meet her when I got to London, and give her a lesson in person and kind of really dial into some more of like the hand positioning things that I was talking about that aren't as easy to explain,
Right.
over Skype. But it's been, tremendously rewarding, I don't really, I think I stayed out of the game because I didn't think I was good enough. But I think a lot of it is just, the philosophy and the mindset that you need to be in.
Absolutely. That's everything, dude.
Yeah. So, a lot of my lessons are mostly just attitude adjustment. And, hey, if you heard this or if you've never heard this, check it out. I think it could be something, that you could mine for inspiration.
It's just mentoring. It's really,
yeah, totally.
I find it to be that, and if you can recalibrate some things that somebody's doing with their instrument or something, that's like the bonus.
It forces me to learn so much. It forces me to really know what I'm talking about and to stop myself when I don't, and be like, you know what? I don't know. I'm going to stop here. I'll get back to you. And there's, I guess, a little bit to the idea of I need to pour some out of my cup to be able to fill it with anything. I really think there's something about giving back, and you earlier when we were talking about your fans and kind of knowing who put you there, I really think that appreciation is like an undervalued emotion. And there's also a Ben Franklin quote, being from Philadelphia, I'm kind of obsessed with, which is teach a man as if you taught him not, with things proposed as things forgot. So the idea that you would teach somebody something as if they forgot it, instead of like, oh, you're so stupid for not knowing this yet.
That's excellent. I like that.
And because I really think that music is this thing that it's, we're just kind of radios tuning into a certain frequency. We're just trying to channel the energy through us and try not to take any responsibility for it. I mean, I personally try to take as little responsibility for it as possible and just let it do its thing.
That's really what it is. I mean, I'm kind of a dick if I don't get to do that, writing a lot and open myself up to the, listen, I never feel like I write anything. It's all coming through from somewhere. But yeah, there is a feeling in my bones that if I don't have the discipline to let it happen, that I kind of start to petrify, and it's right. It's a bad feeling. So,
yeah, and I almost feel like, again, back to, what changes your heroes, or what happens when people get older. I think that it is some of that, like, like anything, it just kind of atrophies.
It does. And so
yeah, I think that's, just kind of a fascinating, take on all that.
Well, cool, man. You're a very interesting dude. I'm very happy to meet you. Yeah.
Yeah, you too.
And I really like your band. I'd heard of your band, but I hadn't heard a lot of the music, and I've gone back to listen to a lot of it, and it's really badass.
Right. Well, like I said, I don't think, at least for whatever I delivered to that end, I don't think, would be where it is without, certain Winger tracks in there. I mean, that first record, I'm telling you, is and anybody in my band will back me up, and other friends too, that it's just kind of this, not even a closet, not even a guilty pleasure, just something that I've always been, it's almost like my, I don't want to say like workout song or something, but like, before we go on, I'll rock, any of that first record, and recently some of the newer one too, and just kind of get in my zone, just because it makes me smile. It's good feeling music.
That's really cool. I appreciate that.
Uh-oh. Sorry, I got somebody knocking at my door. And a dog.
There's a tune about that. Well, it's been really nice talking to you, man. And I give your dog a hug for me.
I will.
I'm a dog person, so I hope he does all right.
Thank you. I will. All right.
And congratulations on having a baby soon and all that. Very nice to meet you. And
Thank you.
I'll look forward to seeing you in the UK, man.
Cool. Awesome. Well, this has been a true pleasure.
All right, Liam, take it easy, man.
Okay. See you later.
Hi, this is Michael Azarad from the Talk House. You've been listening to the Talk House Music Podcast with Liam Wilson of the Dillinger Escape Plan and Kip Winger from Winger. For more musicians talking music, visit Talk House Music at music.thetalkhouse.com.
Hey, this is Kip Winger, and you're listening to the... What am I listening to? The Talk House.
Silver star.